Hi everyone. Today we'll be going into Fusion 360, doing a basic introduction of where its features are and possibly create a basic shape. So to start off, I was going to mention that the version I'm using currently is the desktop version of Fusion 360. Often in a classroom setting, you'll have the online version, which has subtle differences such as where you can save your files, file formats that are compatible. So not a lot of differences with the orientation or the UI at least, but just to be aware of, there will be subtle differences between the desktop and the online version. So to start, we'll be looking at the toolbar at the top. So up here along the top will be your toolbar. So we're under currently the solids toolbar, which is the primary bar you'll be using. There's the surface toolbar also up top. We have mesh, we have sheet metal, plastics, and then finally utilities. Now, in a classroom setting, you'll almost always be using the solid function. If you do go into creating 3D objects where physics are kind of required and you'll be testing something, you'll be certainly going into surface, mesh, and sheet metal to create real or digital versions of a sheet metal project perhaps, or things like that. But for our purposes, we'll be in solids for the most part. So in the solids toolbar, what you have is the create a sketch function. So this function is a very common function that you'll be using. You'll essentially be creating your design with this function, and just when you want to use this function, you want to just tap on it, and then you get these different planes. So depending on how you want to do it, usually I will always select the bottom plane. But say if you want to create a sketch on the side of an object, then you might want to go with the side planes, right? So it really depends on what you're going with, but often you're starting something out, you want to go on the bottom plane. You click on that, and then you can so your toolbar actually changes into the sketch toolbar. It's not there earlier, but it kind of transforms into that once you start a sketch. And then from here, you can make lines, make circles, make all sorts of shapes, fillet some corners perhaps, and kind of make your sketch of what you want to create into a 3D model. Once you've done that, you can go down here and click finish your sketch, and you're kind of good to go. So we're just going to click finish your sketch, even though we've drawn nothing, but that's fine. So that's your sketch function. So once you have a sketch and you want to create it into a 3D model, often you'll be using the extrude function. So I kind of wish I had made a sketch earlier, but we'll do one real quick. So let's just make a quick sketch of there you go, a rectangle. So I made the rectangle sketch. I'm gonna just go down here and click finish sketch, and we have our sketch right there. So now what you want to do is using the extrude function, you're going to tap on extrude, and then it'll often immediately know what you're trying to extrude, I mean. If it doesn't, you can go over to profiles right here, cross that out, and just select what you want to extrude. So often it's a pretty smart feature, but sometimes you have to go around it. So right now, as we're seeing it, it's going to shoot upwards. So if you want this to say this rectangle to go up, or you want it to come out or be about an inch thick, all we have to do is enter 1 in, and that'll be an inch. My units are set to imperial, but if you did want to change them, you can go over here to the document setting on the left-hand side, click units, click this little symbol, and you can quite easily change it to any unit that you like. Do remember that at the end, once say you work in imperial the entire time, and say you need to export it as a metric file, in the end you can actually convert it back into metric just by selecting the option here. Fusion is really smart in that it'll transfer or convert all your units over. So we were able to extrude this upwards, but say if you wanted to extrude this like downwards, for example. So you're going to hit extrude again, we're going to tap the top there, and if you want to go down for extruding, you always want to hit a negative. You put a -1, and now suddenly the arrow goes down, it shows red, and voila, we got nothing, right? But often you will be using different ways to extrude, upwards, downwards, and there's an option actually for going both ways. So quite a basic function, but you can do a lot with it. Most of these other tools aren't too common, like Revolve you may be using when you come to more sophisticated shapes. Often I find is you'll be using fillet a lot. So if we just go back to our shape right here that we've created, you can just go to fillet. So fillet is essentially rounding the corner. Now Fusion does a really excellent job, let me just show you, of showing you what the functions do. So if you just hover over it with your mouse, it'll show you exactly how it does and kind of explains it, which is great for a classroom setting where often a student might have a question. Well, it gives you the answer right there of what the feature does or what you might be looking for. So we're going to just hit fillet. Go over to one of the corners and let's tap on that corner. And if we can just change our angle at the top right here. Now, depending on the number you put in, it'll be a deeper fillet. So if you want to fillet it about, let's say, 0.5 inches, that's quite a deep fillet, considering that the height of the box we have here is an inch. So perhaps a 1/4 inch might be a better option. Like many options, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. There's a rolling ball fillet, there's a setback fillet. Play around these settings. Often you'll find something that works for you. But if I hit OK, there we get our little fillet. So fillet, very common tool you'll be using. Shell, also a common tool you may be using when you want to hollow out something. So for example, this rectangle we could hollow out. Combine, so if you have two objects and you want to put them together, that's also a very common tool. And especially split body. You've created something and now you want to take something away from it in a certain way. Well, split body is going to be kind of your tool. So something that I should have honestly gone into earlier was navigation. So scrolling in and out is just with your wheel and your mouse. If you want to move left to right in a static function, you would be holding down your mouse wheel and just going left to right. So pretty simple. If you want to navigate, you go up to this little cube up here, which is great for navigating. It's labeled on each side. So currently, if I tap the front, we're looking at the front of our object. I can drag that cube and see the right of it, and etc. So it's really good having that little cube at the top to navigate your function and know what kind of view you're looking at. Going into now the side panel here. So this is your folders, essentially, is what they're labeled. So here is what you have are your bodies. So bodies are anything that you physically have created as 3D. Now, if you notice that when I go over to body 1, it highlights our rectangle that we created, and that's the only 3D object we have in the workspace. So that is our body. You can obviously rename these if you ever want to be a bit more organized, but that's just the bodies thing. So anything 3D that you will create in this workspace will be a body of some sort. Then you can go over to your sketches. So the sketches we made earlier, you can. Well, the great thing tool here is you can make it visible and invisible. So you want to hide bodies, we totally can if it's getting in the way of something. But yeah, things like that are just really good for being organized. So make sure this area, if you do have a lot of models, a lot of sketches, rename them. Don't get lost with them. But very great function to have there. Another option that Fusion's I've really enjoyed with them is the option of going back between iterations at the bottom here. So you can quickly, like say we had this rectangle here, you can quickly jump back to when we didn't have it and we had our sketch. And you can actually go back and edit this and then go back in time and go forward again. So you make a mistake, instead of tapping undo or deleting things, you can just quite easily go back and say, okay, let me just fix that, and then go back forward again. It'll actually change your sketch according to your changes that you just made. So really cool option. So I've covered the side panel there with the folders. The top bar is for the most part pretty covered. If you ever want to measure anything, is up here. So oftentimes you won't really know what the parameter of something is, which is totally cool. If you hit inspect and you select 2 points, so let's go, we're on this right side of our rectangle, so hit that point there, and it tells us right here that the space in between them is 1.198 inches. It shows you a lot. Fusion is very powerful. You can go distance, angle, it can show you a lot, but for our purposes, mostly it'll be angle and distance. Up here is where you can insert different file formats. So you have an SFG file, a DXF. Often it'll be those two we'll be working with, not too often mesh files. And that's mostly covers anything we'll be using. So if you want to go and see the files that you've saved, you can just hit the data panel at the top left here. And for me, it shows all my projects that I've done. And this is where all they're all saved. And the great thing is you can even go back to a different older version of your project. Say if you've, for example, with my Daniel Sedin keychain I made, if I want to go back to an older version of it, an older saved file of it, I can just tap the V3 function and it shows me all my older iterations. So in case you made a mistake or you have change of mind, you can easily go back to an old version of it and alter that instead. So everything is on the cloud here with Fusion 360. Has pros and cons, but the pros really stand out with things like this. So don't be afraid to go back and alter different versions of it instead of creating something from scratch. So right here will be where all your saved work is. Just make sure when you start a new workspace file, just to save it at the start. Often it's easier, you won't forget about it. And then once you save it at the start, it'll save it throughout the as you work along through your workspace. All right. So hopefully that's covered most of the basic things in Fusion 360. My next video will likely be going into how to actually create things, how to take away from objects, and how to mold different sorts of things when we're manipulating different objects. But hopefully this was a basic introduction of how to use the features. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and on to the next video. Thank you.